Hello and good morning. I'm Addison and David Lynch back alongside me today to take a look at some Liverpool news. There's a couple of transfer claims that we'll come to. Do let us know in the comments as well what you want to see Liverpool do, and we'll try and get to some of those over the course of the next 10 or 15 minutes or so. But we'll start, Dave, with Jude Bellingham. There's a claim in Spain from Marca that Real Madrid can't afford to compete with Liverpool and Manchester City, which I think is an interesting one for a club that made a bid of 150 million or so for Kylian Mbappe last summer, despite him being in the last year of his contract. It's one to take with a pinch of salt, I would suggest. I would imagine that all three of those clubs are probably going to be going for Jude Bellingham in the summer, but which one it could be, I suppose, is pretty open at this point.
Yeah, I think anyone sort of claiming that anything's decided at this point is just trying to possibly get some clout out of the back of it, and it's one of those, isn't it? There's a lot to talk about around it, and I think it's still going to rumble on for a while, so it's going to be sort of topsy turvy. I think the one thing you would say to fans, Liverpool fans in particular, who want to sign him is, don't get too invested in every new development that comes out. The player himself has got a big decision to make, but he hasn't, there's no urgency on that decision just yet. And there's all the process that's got to go through where, he's going to choose a club that he wants to go to, and then they've got to have a bid accepted and all that. And so there's a long way to go yet. I think the one thing you would say about this latest report that's kind of interesting is that if Marca, which is very close to Real Madrid, is saying that, maybe that's laying the groundwork for missing out. It might maybe not a money issue, but maybe the players indicate to them that it's not the right move for him at this point. We don't quite know yet, but it's interesting they're saying that. And I think, I would say just from the outside as well that I struggle to see him going straight to Real Madrid at the moment. I may be proven completely wrong, but I just think at this point of his development, would maybe see him move back to England as probably the better move. And obviously Real Madrid, you go there, there's so much pressure on you immediately. And I read a report recently that actually said Real Madrid were kind of confident off the back of the fact that they'd proven so good at developing young players in recent years. But I don't actually think that's kind of true. I look at Eduardo Camavinga as a good example of someone who, there's talk recently that he might be available for loan, and that he's kind of getting a bit frustrated with the fact that, yes, he has played a lot of minutes, but a lot of that has been off the bench. He hasn't been a regular starter since going to Real Madrid. So, if you're Jude Bellingham looking at that from the outside, and Camavinga is such a huge talent himself, you'd maybe think that there are other clubs where you could get regular football. And I think Jude Bellingham will make his decision based on that. Is, yes, he wants to go to one of the top clubs, but I think it will be somewhere that he knows he's going to play. And I think that's why Liverpool have got such a good chance, even though they're having this terrible season at the moment. I still think they've got a shot because they've got such a clear vacancy for him in the team, and they have been successful in recent years. So that will be the pitch to Jude Bellingham.
Yeah, I'm sure there's lots for him to decide. Let's face it, none of the clubs would be a bad move for him to make. I think he would enjoy his time at all of them. But I'm sure Liverpool's pitch is, like you say, at least as strong, given the fact that there is that kind of sort of vacancy that they need to fill desperately. There's definitely a role for him there where possibly you could say that at Manchester City, maybe there's a position for him, but probably the least of those at Real Madrid. But we did see Steven Gerrard over the weekend. I mean, we were both at the game, so I imagine you didn't actually see it like me live, but apparently he was talking about the possibility of possibly helping him to make that decision, if you like, to move him across to Liverpool. I mean, we've been here before with other players, but it does sort of feel like one that it does sort of add to the appeal, if you like. If you're Jude Bellingham and Steven Gerrard is your hero, it will play into it to some degree, I would imagine.
Yeah, well, all the talk is that, and I think he said it himself, in fact, that Gerrard was his idol growing up. He was the player he most wants to be like, and you can see those similarities in his game. So the fact that he's making that public plea to him, I think it won't fall on deaf ears. I'm sure he will have seen that, and that'd be interesting to him. There's also sort of a suggestion that his dad's a little bit of Liverpool sympathies there. So you add all that up together, and it's not insignificant. I know it would maybe be easy for the player to go to, say, Manchester City and know he's guaranteed to win trophies. And I know people would say it's about the money, but the possibility to win things at City is much higher at the moment because of the investment they've got and the way they do business. So, but I just think if that's a factor for him, that Gerrard and the pulling at the heartstrings and coming to Liverpool and not just maybe winning trophies by association, but being possibly the main architect of it and salvaging this midfield situation they've got. then that could really, really appeal to him. And he seems like the type of character. I think that's why Liverpool is still in with a shot, is because he seems the type of character who would really value that as much as, making sure he's a big part of it, making sure he's playing. He's made sensible decisions in his career so far, and he seems to have a really good head on his shoulders. So I just think that's why Liverpool have just got a decent shot at getting him. But it's, like I say, nothing decided yet, and still a long way to go. A lot of ups and downs and developments to come, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think one thing we can say for sure, it won't just be the team that offers him the most money. I think it'll be, a much more rounded and considered decision than that. But just before we move on, obviously, Liverpool not anything like guaranteed to be in the Champions League next season. I mean, that will have an impact in terms of the amount of money that they make and possibly the investments that they can make. And again, that will play into the fact of, will FSG have new investment and all the rest of it that we don't know at this point. But if Liverpool were to miss out on the Champions League, how much do you think that would play into his thinking?
I think from the player side, in terms of it's only one season, I think he would see it as, I think, Liverpool have been regular qualifiers for the Champions League in recent years, and I've won it not that long ago under this very manager. So I don't, Jurgen Klopp himself has said he doesn't really, he doesn't want players who just want to jump on the train. He wants players who want to push it. And I think if he's so set on Jude Bellingham, I think he'll have an idea that Jude Bellingham is the type of character who wants to push the train, who will see this season for what it is a bit of a sort of quirk after so much football played in recent years. And that, if he comes in, he can be a massive part of a sort of Klopp's second great Liverpool team that he's putting together now. So, you'd like to think it wouldn't influence his decision-making too much. I suppose the big influence it might have is in terms of the money that's available to Liverpool. But again, Jude Bellingham is such a sort of, it's not a phrase I really particularly love, but he is a generational talent, I suppose. That it's someone who deserves to be described in those terms. And I think Liverpool would find a way of putting that money together if Jude Bellingham told them he wanted to join them. I've no doubt about that. And Liverpool's big problem really around money is tends to be that they don't mind paying the big transfer fees. We've seen that with Nunez already last summer. It's more about if a player wants 400 grand a week, then it starts becoming a bit of an issue for Liverpool. But I've no doubt if Jude Bellingham were to choose Liverpool, they wouldn't suddenly find themselves too short of the cash to get the deal done. I'm sure they could afford it.
Yeah, certainly one to watch out for. I am strangely confident for the position that Liverpool are in. I do think it's really quite likely that Jude Bellingham will be at Liverpool next season, which is an interesting one. But we'll move on to the second part. Ruben Neves, we were going to talk about as well, the suggestion. I can't remember where I spotted this, but Wolves suggesting that he's not for sale this month with 18 months left on his contract. I mean, just before we go into any sort of transfer thing, how big a fan are you of Ruben Neves? I've never quite been convinced of it myself. I don't think he's necessarily quite mobile enough for a Liverpool team, but then at the moment, I think pretty much anyone probably is, so maybe that doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that would be his biggest issue coming in for Liverpool, is they'd be far too easy to get behind him, and that's something that Liverpool already struggle with at the moment. I think Fabinho, the miles he's had in his legs and sort of the struggles he's had this season is that people are buzzing around him either side and finding it very easy to do that. And I don't think that's something that Ruben Neves will solve, because, as you say, he's not particularly mobile himself. One thing I would say is that I'm slightly surprised he hasn't had a move to a bigger club yet, in that I think, okay, maybe wouldn't suit Liverpool's style of play, but I do think he's a very good Premier League midfielder, and when you play at the level he has over so many years, you do tend to get that big move. And I'm just surprised that okay, maybe not Man City, but just any of the clubs around the sort of top 4, top 6, top 8 haven't really had a punt on him, really, because I do think there is a real talent there. It's just he wouldn't suit Liverpool in particular. But yeah, I mean, I think it's one of the reasons Liverpool wouldn't see him as a long-term option, and therefore probably wouldn't go for him in January anyway, because he just wouldn't suit that style of play. So I just don't think that's one that I don't think they would consider it a huge blow that Wolves weren't going to let him go in January. But I'd be interested to see if he gets to 12 months out from the end of his contract this summer, whether someone has a look at him, maybe a Tottenham or something like that. It'd be interesting to see if, because the price has come down, whether someone's more willing to take a punt on him.
Yeah, I think that was probably the issue, wasn't it? I think they were talking like 70, 80 million for him, which I don't think anyone was ever going to spend that sort of money. But we'll see sort of what happens into the summer. 12 months left. I think the suggestion that Barcelona might be interested in him, maybe Xavi might like to take him to Spain. That possibly is one that might suit him. But we'll see. I suppose with all of these players, it's kind of almost Liverpool need a midfielder. That he's got 18 months left on his contract. Maybe the price has come down a bit. It's almost putting two and two together with a few of these names. I suppose he possibly falls into a bit of that category.
Yeah, and there's going to be a few more of those before the end of the window, I'm sure. I think I saw a few rumours flying about last night about Ryan Gravenberch potentially coming in on loan because his agent had been spotted at Anfield. And I'll admit, it's not one I've checked in on yet, and I don't. Maybe I'll be completely wrong, and there's some truth to it. I think there's going to be a lot of people putting two and two together and making five. And one thing I would say about that potential signing just off the bat without any knowledge of whether there's truth in that link or not is that, the idea that a 20-year-old who struggled at Bayern would come in and save Liverpool's season all of a sudden just seems a little ridiculous to me. And I think it's just showing you that there's some desperation around midfield signings that is maybe going too far. I think Liverpool should, and I think I would have loved them to sign someone in midfield this window, but I think I'd rather it be someone who was actually going to make a huge difference in the long term, and it doesn't seem like that option is out there, and that Liverpool are going to do anything about it, unfortunately.
Yeah, it does very much feel to me like if they were going to do that, they would have done what they did with Cody Gakpo, and they wouldn't be doing it at this point in the month. They would have already had it wrapped up. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to do it at this point. I know they obviously moved late in the summer, but again, that was kind of an emergency panic type signing. I think if they were going to do it, they surely would have already done it.
Yeah, and it would be an Arta type signing, and also if that was to be the case, then they'd have to get rid of Arta at this point now anyway, I think, to make space in the squad. So even that talk of a sort of a stopgap of some sort, I really struggle to see it, because I just think they give themselves a squad issue then to solve, and for someone who's probably going to not make a huge impact between now and the end of the season. So it's, I think if you're Jurgen Klopp at this point, you probably, we had the comment mentioned by Chesich, would probably just prefer to use him and give him important minutes in the sense that he, it'll be good for his development going forward, rather than bring in someone who's going to soak up those minutes and not going to make a long-term impact for you. It just would seem like a waste of time now to me. And, if, as annoying as it is, because it almost feels like the season's gone because of that decision not to get a first-team ready midfielder in. But I think that's the situation Liverpool find themselves in now.
Yeah, there could be a few more frustrating games, I think, before the end of this season. But we'll see what happens. We'll keep you on top of all of the latest news and rumours as well as they come for the rest of this month, and indeed the rest of this season across Blood Red, the Liverpool Echo and Liverpool.com. Much more to come throughout the week, I'm sure. But for now, that'll do us. We'll see you later.